Hello, friends, family, common sensors. Welcome to the Common Sense Academy. 2 nights in a row, we go live. It's off the hook. It's off the hook. I'm Joe Pometto, Joe the lawyer, here to bring you legal advice and talk about sovereign citizens, First Amendment auditors, lots of fun and all that good stuff. I'm going to hang out here for a minute. I'm going to sip my drink. We're not going to do the same time sip just yet. We're going to wait until we're about 10 to 15 minutes in and we get some people here to talk and to do the same time sip with. However, I'm thirsty. Probably one of the reasons I have trouble sleeping at night is because I drink 3 to 4 coffees throughout the day and then two to 3 Diet Cokes at the end of the night. I will let you good folks know that I also drink multiple waters throughout the day. I don't know. Caffeine, I smoke a cigar occasionally. I don't drink that much, but caffeine, I love, that's my weakness. Probably not good for my brain, not good for my body. It's not that bad. But I love it. I love the steady supply. I love the little spike in energy it gives me. It helps me work, helps me be a little more productive. So it keeps coming in. It keeps coming in. I love my caffeine. Hello, Bob. Barbecue Bob. I never asked you about your name. What do you like to barbecue? I'll tell you what, I love some barbecue. I love barbecue sauce. I like ribs. I went to Longhorn recently, and it had see something here with these lights. I went to Longhorn recently, and I got, hey Brian, how you doing? Thank you for your comments. Went to Longhorn recently. Hi Kelly. Hi Linda. Thanks for stopping in. And I got a sirloin steak and some barbecue ribs, and it was pretty freaking good. You know, I haven't been to Longhorn in a long time. Longhorn's, a Darden restaurant like the Olive Garden, Smoky Bones, Red Lobster. We got out in Robinson Township around here in Pittsburgh. There's like a little Darden circle. You literally have the Olive Garden, Smoky Bones, Bahama Breeze, Longhorn, all in there. And I went to Longhorn last week, and I got to tell you, I mean, it was good. It was good. I'm good, Ayase. Thank you for coming in. See Carl go. Welcome. I'm glad you stopped by. The thing about those chain restaurants, and I know everybody's not here to talk about chain restaurants. The thing about those chain restaurants is that they are consistent. I believe that's the reason that they are successful. I worked in a lot of restaurants when I was younger, and family-owned restaurants and chain restaurants. Family-owned restaurants generally have better food. The problem is they don't consistently put out the dish is not high quality. So you go to a family restaurant and you order chicken parmesan, and once in a while you're like, wow, this is amazing. But then you go back a couple weeks later and it comes out undone, frozen, not as good quality. And that's the thing with chain restaurants, is they deliver the same quality every time. Lisa Shields, gotta ask, thanks for the question. How do the police keep their tempers when one of the afflicted start going off about common law? And do you ever find yourself spitting your same time sip? No, I've never spit the same time sip out. And you know why? Because nobody spiked it with tequila yet. That reminds me of a story when I was in the Air Force and I was drinking with a couple of buddies of mine who were Mexican Americans, also serving in the Air Force. Anyway, I went to their dorm room. I was probably, 20 years old, and I was stationed in Japan at the time, and we were able to drink because the drinking age in Japan is 20, and I go down in this room with these 2 Mexicans, and I thought they were giving me shots of tequila, and what this jagoff was doing was he was taking a shot, and he was filling it up with what is that shit? Excuse my language. 151. That 151 rum. Okay, he's filling it up with 151 and then put a little tequila on the top so it tasted like tequila to me. And I did like 4 of those shots. And back at those days, I had some alcohol tolerance. Okay, I'm not Irish, but I was drinking a lot. I did 4 shots of this tequila and I projectile vomited. And I couldn't, and they both start laughing their asses off. Luckily, I made it outside. They both start laughing. Bacardi 151, thank you, Ryan. That's how long it's been since I drank it. Hi, Lisa. And I projectile vomited this 151, and these 2 Mexicans are laughing their asses off at me. And I love those guys. They're my friends to the end. And we go back in the room, and I'm like, whew, and he's trying to pour me another shot. I'm like, dude, you see what happened? I'm like, I don't get it, because I could take 4 shots of tequila. He was like, bro, it's 151. So that was more like 8 shots. You know what I mean? They really got me. They got me good. So no, I don't spit my diet out, and I don't drink that much anymore. How do the police keep their tempers? That's a good question, Lisa. What I would like to do, and I will probably do this, is get some cops on this show, okay, to interview. There's some decent cop YouTube channels out there. I like Mike the Cop. That's why I named my other channel Joe the Lawyer, because I watched Mike the Cop and I was like, all right, I like this guy's style. So I'm going to make a video. I'm going to make a channel called Joe the Lawyer. He's Mike the Cop. And Mike the Cop did an episode on sovereign citizens. Maybe somebody can find it on YouTube and link it. Just Google Mike the Cop. We'll just search YouTube. Hang on. I'll find it. And he talks about how the police deal with them. Mike the Cop. Sovereigns. The imaginary, there it is.
Who here has heard of?
Okay, so I'm going to drop the link. And he talks about it. And so certain departments will, I know, Donut Operator. I watch him a little bit. I like Mike the Cop. Anyway, certain departments do training on sovereign citizens. I think, the key obviously is to have an overwhelming amount of patience, because they're gonna, just like some auditors, is they're gonna draw you in. If the officer gets angry, they may lose their cool and do something that they wouldn't normally do. And that's not how they need to approach that situation. They need to keep their cool and ignore the nonsense, use verbal judo, which is something that officers are taught, how to sort of turn words around on you or to control the situation. That's really what one of the main things police officers are taught to do, is how to control the situation. And proceed as they would normally. And basically, they just have a good fundamental understanding of the laws, so that if they need to arrest this individual or detain them, they do so legally, which most of them do most of the time from the videos. But I'm sure that they get extremely frustrated. Brian, retired police chief, thank you for joining the show. Have you ever personally dealt with a sovereign citizen, Brian? If you have, I'd love to have you call in and talk to us about it. All I have right now is my cell phone. My number is 412-593-4529. You don't have to call in, Brian, if you just want to sit back and enjoy the show. But the question was, how do officers deal with sovereign citizens and keep their cool in such a situation? I'm obviously not a police officer. I never served as a police officer, so I can't really give that insight. If you want to call in, Brian, I'd love to have you call in. Or you can just chat us and answer. That's my phone number up there. Why are the courts allowing crazy people to file paperwork? Email. I mean, that's a hell of a question, man. Here's the thing. There's lots of crazy people out there filing court paperwork that aren't sovereign citizens. Okay, there are lots of crazy people out there filing court paperwork, and they are not sovereign citizens. Okay, the courts are open to the public. They are open to pretty much anyone, all citizens who want to file things with the court. The prothonotariys, the clerk of courts, are required to, yeah, I am, Ryan, in a second. Let me finish this thought, and then I'll address your question. Unless Brian's going to call. If Brian, you can call in at any time if you want to, or just drop us, your 2 cents in the chat box. I'll read it out loud. But the courts are open to the public. They're a public forum. Now, certain filings cost money, and so that keeps crazy people out to a certain degree, because a lot of them don't have money, and you're not going to file something in the court. You're not going to spend money on it unless it's serious. But the problem is these sovereign citizens, they get sued or they get drawn in to like a criminal case. In criminal court, the filings are free. That's a right that every citizen enjoys. And they go in there and they file all of this BS. And like I said, more than sovereign citizens, there's tons of people filing BS in the courts every single day. I deal with it all the time. Judges have to deal with it. It's just something they have to deal with. Now, completely fraudulent filings that are intended to harass, that's criminal, okay? And they can be prosecuted and fined, and a lot of jurisdictions have begun to do that, ones that have major problems with sovereign citizens, and I've covered that. So they can't just do it, willy-nilly. If they cross a line, they can be prosecuted. There are some protections in place. It's hard because they all have their own Black's Law dictionary, which is not a legal document in the United States. Yeah, that's for sure. They all love to cite their thing. Okay, so unconstitutional arrest and police immunity. This is a question that Ryan brought up to me. He super chatted me yesterday. I appreciate it very much, Ryan. Super chats like that allow me to dedicate time to come on here, give you guys legal information, and have fun. So again, I really, really appreciate it. So I'm going to answer your question because I've seen these lawsuits. I haven't actually filed any of these myself, but I've researched them. I know plenty of lawyers who do. They are called 1983 lawsuits. So as you know, Ryan, most people know is the government, the federal government and the state government generally have a form of sovereign, I can't believe it, sovereign immunity. It's called sovereign immunity because they're sovereign governments, I guess. I don't know why that word's in there, okay? Really want to get on that. Anyway, it's governmental immunity. Federal government and the state's government generally are protected from lawsuits. And that also generally includes the actor, right? Government officials themselves are protected from the lawsuits, from being sued in their official capacity. And that's the key right there, in their official capacity. So we study this in constitutional law. Early on, I'm talking hundreds of years ago, it was extremely difficult to sue the government, all right? Because, it was just kind of top down. And so most lawsuits against the government were just dismissed by judges, and that's the Constitution allowed it. Later on, laws started to get passed by Congress and state legislatures, which opened up lawsuits against the government. So basically what was happening was the government was saying, these legislators drawing laws were saying, the government was saying, well, you can sue the government in these certain limited instances. And the reason for that is because it was basically seen as unjust, because the government could hurt somebody and trample over people, personal injury, civil rights, and there were no consequences for them. And over time, our law evolved to show that that was not a good thing, that it was better for society to be able to sue the government in certain instances. So let's get to police immunity. The police were included in that general immunity. There was a statute that was passed after the Civil War, a federal law. All these laws were passed after the Civil War. The Reconstruction period is a period of constitutional law that we are not truly educated on. Okay. Anyway, after the Civil War, during Reconstruction, Congress passed the 14th Amendment and a couple other amendments to the Constitution. Okay, here we go. We got a caller. I'm going to get back to this. Hello, this is Joe Pometto. You're on the Common Sense Academy.
Hey, sir, it's Brian Tuttle, Chief of Police.
Hey, Ryan, thank you for calling in.
How you doing tonight, sir?
I'm good. I'm good, and thank you for your service. Where are you currently a chief, or not anymore?
Actually, I've been retired for a number of years, but I served as law enforcement for about 18 years.
Awesome. I appreciate your service, Ryan. I'm a defense attorney, but I try to I have really good relationships with most of the officers that I work with.
Yeah, that's good, because a lot of times, defense attorneys are usually not receptive to our case preparation or points of view.
Yeah, that's true. And the way I see it, the way I approach it is, it's business, right? You're in there, officers are in there doing their job. I'm in there doing my job. We'll go in, we'll have a trial. I shake everybody's hands afterwards. And I think I get better results taking that type of approach. But you're right. A lot of attorneys are different.
Well, when they taught us in the police academy when we graduated, they said when you do your case preparation and you line up all your ducks in a row, dot your I's, cross your T's. Beyond that, it's not our responsibility. It's the prosecutor and defense attorney. We really don't need to get personally involved. I've seen officers get involved in that, and they just go crazy over it.
Sure. Most of the officers, I'm in Pittsburgh, most of them very professional, and a lot of I'm not the only one, because I learned from other attorneys, see how they approach it. Everybody's shaking hands and giving pounds and stuff before and afterwards sometimes. So, it makes the job enjoyable. But so did you ever have to deal with sovereign citizens as an officer?
Yes, sir. We, in Ohio, here in north central Ohio, we have quite a few different factions of sovereigns. We have the free men on the land, we have the sovereign citizens, and then we have some militia groups that are kind of not as organized or doesn't have the numbers of the sovereign citizens, but we do have those factions in Ohio.
Interesting. So the police are generally aware, do you guys generally know who these individuals are?
Well, when we contact them in a field interview, regardless of who they are or what we're contacting them, we do enter that into a database. And if they claim to be a sovereign citizen or a separatist, we have to catalog that and enter it in the database, so if another officer encounters those people, they have an idea of what they're going into.
Gotcha. And so is there any particular training or advice that you give to officers when dealing with these people?
Yeah, I would say be very careful, because we've seen in past cases where sovereign citizens have killed police officers. And those incidents may be relatively rare these days, but they're increasing. And the sovereign citizen movement seems to be gaining, some kind of momentum with the people in the United States that just don't feel like the law represents them or doesn't include them. So I'm not quite sure what their thinking is, but they are very anti-government, anti-establishment, and anti-police.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I think they're dangerous. And that's one of the reasons I do a lot of the videos that I do, because I think it kind of, I think I'm kind of making fun of them, but I'm also shining a light on them and showing that it's a problem. And I've encountered them in court, obviously I've never really encountered them otherwise in my life, but I've seen them in court, and they're generally hostile to even defense attorneys. They say, oh, you're part of the, King George signed you up or whatever. They don't even want to talk to us, and they call us names and say things to the judge, get this guy out of here, blah, blah, blah. Definitely a problem.
Yeah, that's a part of their propaganda movement. They want to create such a rhetoric that when they go to court, they cite all kinds of U.S. codes that don't exist.
Right.
They try to cite all kinds of amendments that doesn't even apply to the argument they're making. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people go to court and try that stuff, and the judge is just like, I really have to hand it to some of these magistrates, because when they hear these cases, like, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
It is. It's completely absurd. And yeah, I think it's growing, and I think a big part of it maybe, the internet and YouTube and social media is kind of a double-edged sword, right? There's a lot of good things that are happening because of it, but it also can cause sovereign citizens to pick up new recruits, spread this propaganda, and then also, they sell this stuff. Like, a lot of these people are making little booklets and selling this stuff to make money.
Right. Yeah, it's all about their agenda, and they're very anti-government and anti-establishment. And the funny thing is a lot of them, they don't believe in guns, they don't believe in police officers, they don't believe in the law. But when something happens to them, who's the first person they're going to call? They're going to call the police officers with the guns to come help.
Absolutely. And yeah, I'm a big believer in the Second Amendment. That's true of all, all the people who are anti-Second Amendment as well. But it's totally true, and it's funny, and it's ironic. It's ironic at the end of the day. How about, so, the question was, how do you keep your cool? So are officers, like, specifically trained? I mean, I guess where I'm coming from is you probably have to learn to keep your cool with all kinds of people, right? I mean, doing the job you did.
Yes, sir. They train us in the police academy to defuse intense situations. We try to talk. We try to negotiate. We don't try to come in too aggressively, because that can enhance the situation. We have to evaluate the situation as it happens. That's the one thing of a police officer. You have to think on your feet, and often you don't have a lot of time to devise a strategy. So you have to kind of negotiate. You have to kind of talk to them and kind of feel what they're saying, and then explain to them, look, that's just not how the law works. I know you don't recognize my authority. I know you think I'm just a part of the patriarchy or whatever. But if you're driving, they say their main thing is, I'm traveling, not driving.
Right.
Okay? And I always used to tell them, okay, if you're going to travel, get out of your car, walk down the road with your own 2 feet, you're traveling. However, when you are driving a car that weighs approximately 25 to 3,000 pounds, and you're driving it down a freeway or a highway or a state road or a county road, you have to be trained and licensed to operate that vehicle. Now, if you want to travel, like I said, that's not going to be in a car. It's going to be on your own 2 feet. Look at the FAA. They don't trust airplanes to people who don't have licenses. Now, they can say the same thing. I'm traveling, not flying.
Sure.
But no, that doesn't work. You have to have a license to operate that aircraft safely and in a manner it's supposed to be operated. And it's no different with the auto codes or the revised codes all across the country. They say if you're going to get a vehicle that weighs over a certain amount of pounds, you need to be licensed to operate that vehicle.
Absolutely. And I like the point you made there, the analogy with the airplanes. I never thought of that, but that's a really good point. Once I started, because like I said, I'd seen a few of them in court, but when I started watching the videos and sort of reading about this and seeing all the traveling stuff, my first assumption, and again, I'm a defense attorney, so I deal with people with suspended licenses all the time. My first assumption was people who got their license suspended, like out to, the next 10 years, they tend to be the ones who gravitate to this right to travel argument because they don't have a legal license. They got it suspended for whatever reason. Maybe they got it revoked. And so they need to justify in their head some way that they can drive, because I recognize it's hard to live in this, it's hard to live without driving, but I feel like they want to justify driving, and it's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. So I guess my question would be, did most of those people with the right to travel, I imagine they had suspended licenses? Did you ever see that?
Oh yeah, a lot. And
Yeah.
that's probably the main reason that they do that. They try to stall, and they try to placate the police officers and stall, and they use these tactics and words saying, "Oh, you don't have jurisdiction over me. I'm a free man on the land," or anything like that. But most of the time, they either have a suspended license or a warrant for their arrest, and that's why they're stalling.
Right.
They're trying to create a buffer between them and the police, so they can say, "Oh, you don't have authority over me, but you can't." There was an instance out in Imperial County, California, Sheriff's Deputy. You've probably seen this video where the lady was saying Article 4, free inhabitant, free man on the land, who is protected on the U.S. Book of Codes, which is the laws you have to follow. Well, you know what? That's not the case. If you have a suspended license, or if you're driving under the influence, or if you're driving with even if, a lot of sovereign citizens don't even get licenses. They don't think they have to adhere to the state, county, federal, DOT regulations, which states that if you're going to operate a motor vehicle over a certain amount of weight, you have to have a license. Sure. And that's the whole point that they reject, they deny, they delay, and the thing is all they're doing is trying to stall for time to make their own defense.
And that's kind of, I kind of thought, you put it into words, they're stalling, or they're creating a buffer. And I think that's what a lot of them, like I recently did, a guy who's on trial for homicide, right? And, adopting this sovereign citizen stuff or spitting it out in court is maybe it's almost a more, I hate to say this, but it's like a more effective way to stall or to create that buffer than just standing there quietly, or coming up with some other. So I never heard it put into words, but I think you're right. That's exactly what they're doing, the majority of the time.
Yeah, well, they taught us that in the police academy, how to, constructively deconstruct your suspect's story, because they will come up with every little detail to try to throw you off your case. And they taught us to stay focused, question them directly, make sure you write down everything you ask them, make sure you write down everything they said, have it all documented, so when you go to court, if they pull that sovereign citizen stuff, it's not really going to work. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's in most of the videos I've seen, the officers tend to deal with it, I think, in a really effective manner. The majority of them, they kind of stand their ground, repeat what they were saying, tell them why they're under investigation, the name and badge number BS, and sometimes it ends with their windows being shattered and them, going away in handcuffs. But that's what it has to come to.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think those instances are kind of rare.
Yeah.
They take that stance that, I don't answer questions. Well, okay, we're asking you questions. If you don't answer questions, how are we supposed to know what's going on? I don't answer questions. I don't submit the searches and seizures. I don't consider you my authority. They create all kinds of rhetoric to try to stall and delay.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. That's what it comes down to, and creating that buffer. And it's really the same tactic when they're in court, is creating that buffer and delaying. And, that's it rarely works out for them, but I guess when they're desperate, that's something to use. Brian, have you ever do you have any stories of specific encounters with sovereign citizens that you'd be willing to share?
Yeah, there was a DUI arrest I made back in 1993. Individual came out of a driveway. I was driving my sheriff's cruiser up the road. A guy came out of the driveway and came into the opposing lane and almost hit me. So I turned around and I initiated a traffic stop on him. And he was known to us as being a militia member. He wasn't really, I guess, categorically a sovereign, but he was definitely anti-government.
Gotcha.
And when I approached him, he did the same thing. You know, who are you? What right do you have to pull me over? I wasn't doing anything. And I said, sir, you almost hit me coming out of a driveway. I was in the opposing lane of traffic, and you came over and into my lane and made me swerve while you were pulling out of the driveway. So when I turned around, I pulled you over. I said, give me your license, registration, proof of insurance, please. He said, I don't have to provide that to you. I said, sir, you have to provide me with your proof of license, insurance, and registration. Please give that to me. No, I'm not going to give that to you. Okay, get out of the car.
Right.
So, anyway, I did a field sobriety test on him, and he failed miserably. And he was citing, you don't have authority over me. You know, I'm a militia member, and we're gonna get you later on. And yada yada yada.
Right.
Yeah. So I charged him with threatening a police officer too. So anyway, when I took him down to the office, and we had him blow in the breathalyzer, he was a .22.
Ooh.
Which is in Ohio. In Ohio here, we have a limit of .08. So he was approximately probably 2.5 times the legal limit. And so when we finally got him, he tried to resist a little bit, but you know, he wasn't a big threat because he was so drunk.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And then he tried that sovereign citizen stuff, like, oh well, I'm a militia member. You know, we're gonna find you where you live and yada yada yada. Whatever, shut up, get in the car. You know?
Right. Yeah, it's it never ceases to entertain on one level, and just them spitting this stuff out. It's hilarious. I don't know as much.
Their one main argument is anti-government.
Right.
And I never could understand that because, you know, you live in the United States. The United States is the best country on the face of the planet. People may disagree with me, but we have rights that no other country really provides for their citizens. And then when honest people like me, my wife, my kids, my friends, my officers, my colleagues, we all try to live the right way, you know, by the law, by the regulations. We don't lie, we don't cheat, we don't steal. But some of these sovereigns, they just don't consider themselves a part of this nation. So if they say, okay, I'm a sovereign citizen, okay, well, what citizen do you want to be a part of? You know, what country do you want to be a part of? They don't have an answer for that.
Sure. And I agree with you on that 100%. And I think I made this point in some prior videos. I was like, well, they don't want the laws to apply to them when they don't like it. Okay. But, they have no problem spending United States currency. They have no problem, taking all the benefits that our society has here in this country whenever it benefits them. So, like you said, go start your own country, or you don't want to be a part of the country. Fine, go live in the woods. You're a free man. Go live in the woods somewhere. Get in the wilderness, and stop using our money. But there's probably 100 different websites out there and YouTube channels. They're taking people's money every day. They got no problem with that.
Yeah, and yeah, that's the thing about the sovereigns. You know, they. I remember a video I watched. Like I said, I referenced the Imperial County, California deputy earlier, the article for free inhabited.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that the lady, the female in the altercation said, and this is what's always gotten me. She says an Article 4 free inhabitant has all of the rights of a U.S. citizen without having to follow any of their laws. Now, you can look this video up on YouTube, and I'll tell you what, that statement by itself is just so ignorant and stupid. Like, you would have all the rights of a citizen without having to follow any of their laws. I mean, that's got to be the best joke I've heard in a long time. I laughed myself to sleep over that one.
Absolutely. And the other thing too is it's incredibly selfish. You know, their whole worldview is just this, if you really break it down, it's this incredibly, just unbelievably selfish, self-interested worldview. And yeah, it's their problem, and I think it's growing. I mean, you know, they put these videos up, and you know, they have these handbooks and whatnot, but there's a lot out there, and it can be dangerous. It's not a good thing.
Yeah, they can be dangerous. I mean, make no mistake. I tell all my colleagues, even though I'm retired now, I tell all my colleagues, be careful, because you know, those sovereigns, they have the potential to be dangerous, because sovereign citizens have killed police officers.
Right.
There's a incident in Oklahoma where sovereign citizens killed a couple of police officers, and one of the police officers was the chief of police son. And those two individuals got caught in a Walmart parking lot, and they had a gunfight, not unlike the North Hollywood shootout.
Sure.
They were laying around everywhere, and they eventually took these two guys down, luckily without the loss of any police officers' lives. But they, like I said, they had already killed two police officers. So some of these sovereigns, you know, they have the potential to be very dangerous.
Sure. And it's sort of like a radicalization, almost like a cult-like. And, you know, I see some of these people who, okay, well, you have the doofuses who are driving on the suspended license, and, you know, they just research it because they want an excuse to drive. And then you maybe have the people who are in prison, and they're using it, you know, to delay the court system, and they can't psychologically accept what's happening to them. But then you also have these people who really, they take it all the way, right? They take it to the extreme. They truly start to believe these things, and they become radicalized. And yeah, I can see it. Well, there's instances of it happening, obviously, but they start to look at the government as the enemy, and they see the police as the embodiment of that. And yeah, it's a dangerous ideology, no doubt.
It is, and I'm concerned for every officer out there on duty, because when I graduated the police academy in 1993. Okay, that was quite some time ago.
Yeah.
Okay, when I came out of the police academy, we didn't have cameras in the car. We didn't have tasers. We didn't have computers. We had to really do it old school. We had to do it paperwork and investigation. Very, very hard investigation. We had to really figure out our crimes by ourselves. Now, with the information age, it's way easier for police officers to categorize these people. And so when another officer pulls them over, they have the information right in their hands, and they know what they're dealing with. So that's a lot. That's a big leap forward in technology for law enforcement, and I'm really happy, because I think that will save lives. Because a lot of these guys, once you put them in the database, if they ever get over on another officer and another officer encounters them, they're going to know exactly what they're dealing with.
Absolutely. That's a good thing. And yeah, that's why I was asking, if you guys, if the officers, you have a database, who, at least know who some of them are and where they are. What I got a question from, well, somebody wants to see my pants. Tay's great. Joe, ask him if he's encountered a Moor. Have you ever encountered the Moorish sovereign citizen, sir?
No, sir. I've never. I've seen internet videos about Moors. I'm not quite sure what. I think that's like a branch off of the sovereigns, but I'm not. I mean, I think if I'm not mistaken, the Moors consider the United States part of Morocco.
Right.
Yeah, and I never. I mean, Morocco is like in like North Africa.
I know.
How would the United States be part of Morocco? I never could understand that.
It's crazy. Again, it's like that. I've said this before as well, but it's like the sovereigns and Moors, like they want to rewrite history to try to, fit their world view. I think the Moors are like, they're obviously in Philadelphia. Okay. That seems to be like their big base. The Moors are primarily African Americans. So, I imagine that's where the movements are in the African American communities, but they primarily, from what I've seen, a lot of them out like basically Eastern Pennsylvania. Philadelphia tends to be, I don't know, the base for them. So, they might not have a big presence in Ohio or other areas of the country. But yeah, that's yeah, wild.
Yeah, I can never understand that because I mean, there's like I said, like even here in Ohio, there's sovereigns, and then there's militia, and then there's separatists, and then I guess there's Moors. I haven't really encountered any Moors, but I assume they're out there.
Yeah,
and I mean,
yeah.
I'm lucky. I still live in a pretty rural area. I don't live in a big metropolitan area, but I have policed metropolitan areas. The diversity, okay, I love the diversity of people, but it's like certain groups of people just have their own anti-police views, and it's like after so many years, you just get so tired of it.
Sure. And it's like Philadelphia. I had a friend. I went to Temple I went to Temple University in Japan. Anyway, I made a bunch of friends in Philadelphia, and I would go out there once a year. And I think they've sort of been in the news recently, but like the Black Israelites, right, are like this radicalized sort of group that's out in Philly. And I remember I was walking down the street in downtown Philadelphia, and there was just a big group of them, and they had all these very graphic signs in this setup, and they were just giving speeches and trying to walk up and talk to you. So I don't know. Philadelphia seems to be a hotbed for that type of stuff. And I think that's mostly where you'd find the Moors, but I'm sure they're everywhere. There's also like this Moorish temple, which appears to be, I don't know, maybe disconnected, but connected to the anti-government movement. And I think that's also based out in Philadelphia. So that's probably where they are for the most part.
Yeah, I haven't had too much experience with the Moors. I think that's kind of a new thing. But like I said, all the years that I was on patrol, we here in Ohio, we had the sovereigns and we had the militia.
Right.
And actually, the sovereigns and the militia weren't even a part of the same faction. They were both separate factions. Militia is more really anti-government with weapons. With,
right.
Threats of force.
Right.
Now, the sovereigns are like, well, we're just not going to pay attention to any of your laws and regulations. So it's kind of two separate factions, but I think the sovereigns are just as dangerous as the militia. However, I think most of the militias have too much brains to actually take on the American government.
Right.
I mean, the militia guys are sovereigns are mostly, I think the sovereigns have made their speech and their sales pitch so many times that they're starting to actually believe their own BS.
I agree, Chief. Definitely happening. But listen, thank you for coming on. Thank you for your service. I really enjoyed our conversation. I think the audience has too. And thanks for being a fan of the show. I really enjoyed this conversation.
I'm a big fan of the show. And you know what? It does taste better when we sit together.
I think I forgot the same time sip because you called in. We'll have to do one in a little bit.
Okay, Bob.
All right. Thank you, Chief. I appreciate you coming on.
Hey, take care, and God bless America.
God bless the USA. Thank you.
All right, bye.
All right. Bye-bye. I just want to say thank you again to Chief Tuttle for coming on the show. That was really cool of him to call in, share some of his experiences with sovereign citizens. You know, the militia is something that I don't know much about. I just remember growing up, I was born in the 80s, growing up in the 80s and the 90s, and sort of hearing about the militia movements on the news, etc. And I think Timothy McVeigh was a militia member. Maybe even he was like slightly sovereign citizen. But that was just a really great perspective from Chief Tuttle. So yeah, everybody give him a shout out in the chat. Let's say thank you to the Chief for coming on and giving us that story of the militia sovereign that he pulled over for the DUI. Too funny and really a lot of fun. I'm glad he hopped in. Taze, who doesn't consent? Okay, I want to get back to, because Ed asked me this question, First Amendment Ed. I want to get back to this, and I'm only going to go for, again, a little over an hour today, or I would have probably even gone longer with the Chief. So Ed, you asked me, can you sue the police? I got into this big conversation about the history of the law. The answer is yes. There's a law. It's called Section 1983 under the Federal Code, and it allows people who have had their constitutional rights violated to sue certain government officials. Okay, and that applies to the police. So if you hear about lawsuits in the news for, say, excessive force, et cetera, those lawsuits are likely under Section 1983 of Federal Code. That's easy for me to remember because I was born in 1982. And the legal theory is kind of interesting because you can't technically sue the police department, okay, or the actual state or municipal government. You name the actual police officers or the officials who violated your constitutional rights. If they were acting under the color of law, but in that process violated your constitutional rights, you can sue them. And the way it's set up is most police departments and stations, law enforcement agencies, they have insurance companies, so the officers are insured. So, it's not, hopefully, usually it wouldn't be the case. It's not going to come out of that officer's pocket personally if somebody sues them and a settlement is paid out or a verdict is decided at court. Okay. But, back to your question, Ed, you can sue. It pierces their immunity. Yeah, more or less. That's one way to think about it. But remember what I said before is the government passed certain laws that allow the government to be sued. So it's like the government saying, okay, you can sue us now. That's what this Section 1983 did. Like, it opened up the route for government officials to be sued when they violate the Constitution. Okay. So Congress could at any time repeal that law. It will likely never happen, but Congress could repeal that law and then governmental immunity would apply again. You couldn't sue them. But the government said, okay, you can sue them, and this is how it's done. You sue the actual official, not the government entity itself, and you go from there. Now, here's the thing. Those aren't easy lawsuits, okay? And oftentimes they're lost. Plaintiffs bring those suits, they can lose. Those can be difficult burdens to meet. But it can happen. You can sue the police, and you can sue other government officials who would violate your constitutional rights. Governmental immunity still applies in other areas of the law, although even in other areas like personal injury, it's been chipped away. My question was, is it the case you can only pierce their immunity if what they did was ruled constitutional by the federal court where they are prior to the time the officer acted? That's a deep question, Ed. So the answer to that is no. You can't. So here's the thing. So these 1983 lawsuits, all right, that's a federal law. And then you have different federal jurisdictions, right? Like I'm in the Western District of Pennsylvania. And Western District of Pennsylvania will interpret the law a little bit different than, say, the third, other districts. I don't want to say third, other districts of the United States. So no, it doesn't have to be a well-established constitutional violation in order for you to sue. However, there are, nowadays that area of law has been so well developed that usually if you come to an attorney, they're going to look up the law, they're going to say someone is sued in this area before, and then they're going to follow that path. So no, it doesn't necessarily have to be the case that it was ruled unconstitutional prior. A creative attorney can sue under a theory of unconstitutionality that another attorney maybe didn't see. And that gets into a deeper question of legal interpretation. Okay, like for instance, I don't know what this, I'm trying to think here. For instance, for a long time, I'm going to use DUIs as an example, okay? And a recent DUI decision that came down from the Supreme Court that said that when certain language is read to someone, okay, it was seen as coercive. Well, an attorney got creative and argued that this language was coercive. And then the Supreme Court said, we agree that's a violation of the Constitution, even though it wasn't a violation of the Constitution before, or it wasn't interpreted that way, or that situation was just never brought to the Supreme Court. So I don't know if that clarifies your question, Ed, or Ryan. I'm sorry, Ryan, you asked. I'm sorry. I got, you guys both have hats on in your avatars, and I got you mixed up. I apologize, Ryan. It was your question. So I'll try to sum it up real quick. I don't want to spend too much time on this. Yes, you can sue the police for violation of constitutional rights, and you can sue other governmental officials for violations of constitutional rights. That's allowed under Section 1983 of federal law, and it's allowed because the government has specifically said you can sue in this area. There does not have to be a prior case or ruling in order for you to claim the constitutional violation. However, as an attorney, attorneys are going to look to the prior rulings to guide them when they file these lawsuits. Makes sense, right? Makes sense. However, a creative attorney may see a constitutional violation where someone has not, and they can try a case like that, okay? That is actually one of the benefits of having a common law system like we do in the United States. Attorneys can experiment with cases. That's how the law evolves and changes. It's not always economically feasible to do that, but some lawyers, some firms can do it. And thank you very much, Ed, for the super chat. I greatly appreciate it. Ed and Ryan, I hope you guys both asked me questions. I hope we got some. I hope I got you somewhere with it. I have one sip left. Okay. So we're going to do a simultaneous sip, and I'm going to take a couple more questions. I hope you all have beverages. Perhaps you have a beer. You may drink wine. You may drink vodka. You might drink Coke like I do. I don't think I have a lot of Diet Coke fans out there, maybe regular Cokes. Perhaps you drink water, which is the healthiest option, orange juice, grape juice, or any of the other countless beverages out there. Regardless, whatever you have, raise it in the air. Let's do a cheers, a salute, a kampai. I lived in Japan and I know a little Italian. That's it. Let's do a cheers in the air because the sip tastes better. And I do like sake. Sip tastes better when we sip it together. Cheers, same time sip. Yes. Yoo-hoo, Gary. I love the yoo-hoo. What do they say in German? What is it in German? What's cheers in German? I only drink warm water on the days of my recitals. Interesting. Very interesting. Chin chin. Prost. That's right. Prost. Thank you, Lissa. Thank you very much. Vodka and water. Vodka, water plus fur. Diet Pepsi. I'm with you, Keck. I'm with you. Tastes better when we sip together. Absolutely, Chief Tuttle. Absolutely. More delicious. Coke is the best. I do. Yeah, but Ed's question has money behind it. That is true. That is true. I ought to say we just did the same time sip. Prost. Hey, Paul. Thank you for coming in. And thanks for coming in from Rhode Island. A couple more minutes left. Anything else that we want to discuss? You know, I had one of my patrons on Patreon had a question for me, but he's not here in the chat. I'm going to address it later. It was about sovereign citizens. What's your favorite Pennsylvania winery? Oh no. See, Carl, go. You're going to expose me. You're going to expose me as a fraud. I don't have a favorite Pennsylvania winery. I don't know enough of the wineries in Pennsylvania. Give me some suggestions and I will try them out. I don't drink that much alcohol. I used to, like I said, when I was younger, when I was in the Air Force. I appreciate the super chat, Charles. I'm giving you my honest Carl. I'm giving you my honest answer, man. I don't have a favorite winery because I don't drink that much, and I don't drink that much wine. Adams County Winery, Gettysburg. Okay. Now I do know that Erie. I mean, there are some wineries around Pittsburgh. I know Erie has a real nice area with a lot of vineyards, and I've had a lot of friends and family have gone up there and done wine tastings and spent the weekend. I should really do that, but I haven't done it. I do enjoy wine. I like a glass. I've been to Italy a couple of times. I used to work in Italian restaurants, so I actually know a little bit about wine, even though I don't drink that much. You know, I can talk about a dry wine, a sweet wine, a medium-bodied wine. I like Cabernets. I like something dry. I like Merlots, which are a little medium-bodied, and I like Pinot Noirs, which are sort of sweet but medium-bodied. Those are kind of my favorite. Those are probably my three favorite wines there. I'll drink anything red. I'll drink a dry white wine. I'm not that big on white wine, but you know, I'll pair it up, or if I'm at a restaurant or something, or at a fancy event and someone's pouring some wine. So Yeah, I do. I mostly drink beer, James, when I do drink. So, if I go, I don't drink that much, but if I go to the bar, I don't think I've ever ordered wine at a bar. I'll drink wine at a restaurant. I'll drink wine at people's houses. I've never ordered wine at a bar. I know some people do that. Yeah, Red Zinfandel's not bad. If I go to a bar, I'm pretty much exclusively drinking beer and maybe doing some shots if the night goes that way. Maybe I'm not a beer snob. I mostly drink, and you guys from Pennsylvania and maybe even Chief Tuttle. I don't know. I know you're up in Northern Ohio. I like Iron City Light. Iron City is like a local Pittsburgh beer. Pittsburgh's the steel city. There was a lot of iron made here too. And Iron City Light was a local brewery and it still more or less is. And I like, or Iron City was local brewery, and I like the light beer. So when I do drink, I'll have one or two of those, and I won't get buzzed. And I don't like that. One of the reasons I don't drink is because I don't want to drink and drive. I'm very against drinking and driving, and I'm a defense attorney, and I'm out there trying to help people on their DUIs after they get charged. And I really don't like it. So if I do drink on a night when I'm going out, I may have one beer, or I'll take an Uber if I'm going to have more than that. Iron City. Yeah. Iron City. Listen, I know they call it. So what they call it is Iron Shitty. We get Iron Shitty. But I like Icy Light. I don't know why. I like Icy Light. I'm not the biggest fan of Iron City itself. And Chief Tuttle, Barbecue Bob, you guys, I like Yingling too. I mean, Yingling is a great beer. I remember drinking it growing up, and it was only regional, and it was basically available in Pennsylvania, probably parts of Ohio and some of the surrounding states, and that was it. And now you can buy it all over the country. I mean, I've walked into beer distributors in Florida, and they're selling Yingling. So I'm a big fan of Yingling and Icy Light. I do like some craft beers. I like IPAs. The thing with IPAs though is they get me drunk, man. I drink like 3 or 4 of those. I'm feeling it. Okay, Silver Fox, how do you fire an attorney that is on an estate case that is tied to a crooked judge just for the money of the estate? That's a good question, because attorneys on estate cases play special roles because they're trustees. And it'd be really hard to get them off because they're chosen by the individual who has died. Excuse me. So if you go and you write a will, with that attorney and then you die, that attorney is the administrator of your estate. So he's going to be the one who interprets the will and then gives out all the goodies afterwards. And the person who hired him is dead. So that's actually a really good question, Silver Fox. I don't know. I mean, I'll get back to you with it. Firing an estate attorney, because the heirs to the estate, the friends and the family, they don't pick that attorney. The dead person picked that attorney. I'll tell you, in any situation where you pick your attorney, you can pretty much universally fire that individual at almost any given time. Now, if you do it on the day of your trial, the judge may not allow you. Okay. Or if you've already fired 10 attorneys and now you're on your 11th, the judge may get sick of it at a certain point in time, and they can regulate that relationship. But otherwise, you can fire an attorney. $750 million estate. Yeah, Silver Fox, that's an excellent question. I don't have the answer for it. Because again, that that attorney, you likely the only way to get an attorney off an estate as if he's an administrator, and I'm just shooting from the hip here, is if you can actually show some misconduct or some ineffective something ineffective, like literally legally ineffective. That's a high bar. It can't just be you're not happy with what they did or they made some bad decisions, da 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 da. It's probably pretty tough to get them off. Hey, Taze, I was asking first if she was single. Okay, I was asking first. That's a good question. I mean, I could Google it right now and that wouldn't do justice, but I'll look into it for you. I was watching Broward Bond Court today and one of the guys fired the PD. Yeah, that's the thing. See, Carl, go. You can fire your criminal defense attorney and you can fire the public defender. Now, some judges, they like you to do it in a proper way. They don't always want you to just fire that person right there on the spot during court. Okay. The real way to do it is to like file a motion, and then the judge considers the reasons set out in the motion, etc. But they're almost always, they're going to let you have a right to represent yourself in a criminal case. You just have to be advised of all the bad possibilities that could arise from you doing that, and that you're knowing and intelligent, not under the influence of drugs or mental illness. Okay. And then you can do it. It can be sensitive. So yeah, you can generally fire your attorney in any situation. But that, yeah, Hurley, I know Broward County. I know Hurley moved on. He's at the Court of Common Pleas. He's still down there, probably. He's probably still dishing it out. We just don't get to see it, Carl. It's not recorded anymore. How is the new judge in there? How is the new Broward County magistrate judge? Broward County's Fort Lauderdale, right? My mom lives in Fort Lauderdale. I've been down there many times. My brother-in-law used to always take a 12-pack of Yingling back to Colorado. Yeah, exactly, Ryan. Everybody, my early 20s, my friends or people will come to Pittsburgh and they'd be like, but they get a 6-pack and take it home with them. Or people, when I was in the military, guys were like asking to get it like specially delivered to them and shit. Like I was down in Florida. But now it's pretty much nationwide. Yeah, we got to check in with the Broward County Court. Absolutely. Absolutely. Want to go see that and see there's a decent campground nearby. That reminds me of this funny story. When I first was in law school and I was shadowing this defense attorney, and we go to this judge, a judge in Pittsburgh. Okay. And I walk in, when you walked into his office, this guy was great. He was a former officer. I walked in and you hear screaming at the top of his lungs, screaming as loud as you can think. And it struck fear in me. And everybody out in that hall waiting for court was terrified. And what this judge would do is he would chew you a new a-hole, okay? And then he'd turn into a nice guy and, he'd cut you a break. Yeah, I mean, we're talking minor stuff, this and that. He would scream his face off and then cut you a break. And I just kind of loved his philosophy. It was like this, it was like the carrot and the stick. He gave you the stick and then he gave you the carrot. And I'll tell you, people would go in there and they'd be standing up straight and super dressed. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I mean, he got a lot of respect. But I'll never forget walking in there and hearing him screaming at the top of the lungs. Let me tell you, if that courtroom was recorded, it would be one of the most watched things on YouTube. I'm telling you. I mean, it was like it was Judge Judy on crack. And this guy was probably 6'5", okay, over 300. He was just a massive human being. And he was a former police officer in that community. In Pennsylvania, I don't know about a lot of these other states. In Pennsylvania, you can be a magistrate judge. You don't have to be an attorney. So we have, and I actually, some people, I think it's kind of cool. So a lot of the magistrate judges are former police officers, but we have a magistrate judge who was a plumber. We had one of the communities close to me. There was a mayor who finished up being a mayor. He enjoyed public service. He went and became a magistrate judge. It's really cool. Most of them still probably attorneys, probably like 50, close to 50% are attorneys. And then a big portion of them are also police officers. And I think it's kind of cool too, because, these officers can, be officers for 20 some years, maybe retire from the force and then run as a magistrate. And, it's sort of a promotion. It's a different kind of job. Obviously it's more of a desk job, but they're still involved with law enforcement. And I actually appreciate those judges more than some of the attorneys because they understand criminal law. What happens is a lot of civil attorneys who go and they do personal injury or estates and trusts, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's great, but that's not what you're dealing with at a magistrate court. At the minor courts, magistrate courts. Thank you, Silver Fox. I appreciate it. Thanks again to Chief Tuttle for coming on. He really made this episode a lot of fun. But the magistrate courts, you're dealing with landlord-tenant, criminal law, okay, and small claims. Landlord, tenant, criminal law, and small claims. So that's what the judge needs to know. There's these attorneys out there doing like commercial litigation, representing billion dollar companies. They run for local magistrate, okay? They have no clue what is going on. They know nothing about criminal law. They know nothing about landlord-tenant law, okay, except what they learned in law school 20 years before. And I'm just like, man, like, come on. What are you doing? Like, you don't know shit. And we have to teach them. So me as a defense attorney and a prosecutor, like when these guys are new, they do go to a course so they know something. But really, they're not going to know what they're doing until they've been sitting up there for at least a year. Years ago, New Hampshire actually prosecute criminal cases. They're called police prosecutors. So that actually happens in Pennsylvania sometimes as well. So number one, minor offenses. Thank you, Chief Tuttle. Thank you. Minor offenses, which are called summary offenses. Oftentimes the officers will prosecute the case without the district attorney because they just don't have resources for district attorneys to support those types of charges. But for misdemeanors and felonies, I've never been to a court where the officers had to do those on their own, though I've heard stories that in some of the smaller counties years ago, officers would do those at the minor level on their own. And so it really just depends on they know nothing, Gary, exactly. It really just depends on the court and the particular case. Sometimes even on the minor cases, if there's a prosecutor nearby, we call them district attorneys here. I know they're called different things in different states. There's a prosecutor nearby, they'll bring them in. Hey, Vincent, thanks for stopping in. They'll bring them in. And, just to have the DA and the officer make sure that they cover all the bases. But, the traffic stuff, I'll tell you, I've seen some police officers who are better than the district attorneys. Okay. And so I've done some traffic cases where the officers had to, they subpoenaed 3 or 4 witnesses, and then the officer sits there and he does the direct examination of the witnesses, right? Like, because there was this case, there was a paramedic and then a couple of civilians. And so the officer called them, did the job of the district attorney, called them up, ran them through. He made the argument at the end, and I'm not ashamed to say he beat me in that case. And I don't win all my cases. newsflash, he beat me. And hey, Big Red, thanks for stopping in. He beat me in that case, but he put on a great case. And I said to him after the case, I said, you did better than half the prosecutors that I see. And he was like, thanks, man. He was like, thanks. I was like, did a good job. It was, yeah, it really cracked me up. It's funny, some of the stuff you see. And that, again, like most jobs, you get a new prosecutor. And, I'm not the most seasoned, but I've been doing it long enough now that I feel pretty confident. I feel pretty confident. I remember when I was new and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But you get a new prosecutor in there and you're like, oh, geez, kind of like a new judge. So yeah, it's fun. It's a fun job. It really is. But yeah, a couple of times I've had here's what happens, okay, is election season. And again, every state is different. In Pennsylvania, all of our minor court judges are elected. All of our judges are elected. All judges are elected in Pennsylvania. I know some states appoint their judges. And after an election, you get the new judges. And that's when we go in as attorneys, and we see they're kind of like fresh meat. Or the thing that stinks about it is that it slows everything down. And that's, it is what it is. Like, we've got to teach them and they've got to learn on the job. And but it slows everything down. So we'll go in there and this judge won't know what he's doing, and it takes 2 hours to figure everything out. New Hampshire police prosecutors on those free keens. Yeah, I've seen them. Pretty cool that they call them the police prosecutors. I actually think that's kind of a cool name. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, everyone. I'm getting a little tired here. Before we go, you're welcome. I say, everybody, thank you. Thanks again to Chief Tuttle. I have another channel, Joe the Lawyer. Okay, what I'm gonna do is subscribe to that channel. I don't have 1,000 viewers on that channel, 1,000 subscribers yet. I'll get there. All my live streams are going to be for both channels. So that's what I'm going to do going forward, because I love my audience here, you guys, my community, I love. And I don't want you to have to sort of juggle between 2 live streams. So probably what I'm going to do going forward, once I get 1,000 over there, is my live streams are going to be on both channels. Just an announcement. Go ahead and subscribe to that, though. It's called Joe the Lawyer. Most of you are probably already subscribed. And that'll just be more legal content. I am going, a gentleman who does a podcast, it's called the Cosmic Geppetto Podcast. I am going to be on his show on Friday night. Now, I don't know if we're going to be live. Okay, I'll let everybody know, but I may actually live stream it on here. Okay, it'll be 9 p.m. Friday. No, I'm sorry, 8 p.m. 8 p.m. Friday. That's my regular streaming time. 8 p.m. Friday. So I'll put an announcement on the community post, but 8 p.m. Friday. This dude, I checked out his channel. He seemed pretty cool. He said he covers like a whole bunch of different topics, pop culture, comic books, video games. He gets into politics. It's sort of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of like a variety show. And he asked me to come on, and I said, heck yeah, I want to reach more people. He likes the sovereign citizen content. So I'm going to be on that. It's called the Cosmic Geppetto Podcast, 8 o'clock on Friday. If I can, I'll live stream it on here as well. If not, I'll drop it afterwards. Another thing I'm going to do with the channels going forward is I want to do, I'm going to start interviewing. I did some of this previously, but my channel's grown a lot. I'm going to start interviewing. I'm glad I had Chief Tuttle on, because I wanted to get some police officers on here. I'm going to start interviewing police officers and attorneys on this show and on Joe the Lawyer. So I got a guest coming up. She's a female attorney, about the same age as me. She does family law. She's a solo practitioner. She does criminal defense. I think she's a great lawyer. She has a really unique perspective on the practice of law, etc. Being a solo female practitioner, the legal field is male dominated nowadays. It's funny. When I was in law school, there were more women in my class than men. What I've seen in the practice of law, I know I was going to tune out, but what I've seen in the practice of law is, and people are probably going to call me names this, but men tend to be the ones who go out on their own. Women go and work at law firms and they do great and they advance, or they work for the government, they do terrific. But men seem to be the ones who go the entrepreneur route a little more often than women. But there's an auditor who claims to be a former chief. Oh, geez, I got to find him. So I really enjoy this attorney because she's a female. She's an entrepreneur. She's out on her own. I love what she's doing. So I'm going to have her on the show and we're going to talk. I'll let you guys know. Just wanted to give you an update of what's going on in my head. Taze, shoot me an email or link me to the auditor who was a former police chief. That should be a good one. Damon Chief Jones. But I also, drinking all that Diet Pepsi, I got to take a leak. So everybody, thank you for tuning in tonight. Thank you for the super chat, First Amendment Ed, and more fun stuff to come. Okay, everybody. Common Sense Academy is out.